Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today is a little different because we're going to be drawing inspiration from something not yet released. This character will be called the Time Diver, and the game it belongs to is Team Bloober's yet to be released survival horror game Cronos New Dawn. It seems like each week lately, Bloober releases a new teaser or dev talk about Cronos, and the accumulating hype is working its spell on me, at least enough that I'm going to try my hand at drawing a person in a deep diving suit, and maybe some other strange stuff to go along with it. It should be a fun challenge. Lots of metals and fabrics and bridging some gaps based on what I can see and what will have to be imagined. Before we get into the video, I want to remind you that if you want to check out more of my art or want something to hang on your walls, make sure to check out my site drawinglore.com. The link is in my bio and in the description. There are quite a few drawings over there of game, comic, and film characters, as well as some creations of my own. I appreciate all of your support in helping me grow as I figure this whole YouTube thing out. Leave a comment recommending any characters you might like to see drawn. This channel exists in part to break down the barrier that discourages people from drawing. It's something more intimidating than it needs to be. I think many people assume it is a given talent, but it's not. It just takes some practice. So I hope you'll pick up a pencil and try your hand at something that inspires you. Alright, let's get into it. Cronos New Dawn is a third-person survival horror game developed by Bloober Team, set to release sometime later this year, 2025. Bloober Team, while once a studio that may have been a bit divisive, now sits in good standing after developing the stellar and horrific Silent Hill 2 remake, a game known for its psychological terror and dread and angst-infested atmosphere, a game dripping with style and clever design. So it's on the back of this remade giant of the genre that Cronos has many of us hopeful. Hopeful for a new IP that can hold space somewhere between Silent Hill and Dead Space. In Cronos, we play as a time diver, an agent sent back in time by a secretive organization known as the Collection, to an altered version of Krakow, Poland in the 1980s. The mission? Retrieve key figures that were lost during an event known as the Change. Presumably these people are key in planning for the future of mankind, or, possibly, changing the past so that the darker futures may never come. The game immediately caught my eye due to its heavy inspiration from Dead Space, which is my personal favorite horror franchise. The developers have spoken on their inspirations for the game, which include The Thing, Dark, the Netflix series, Annihilation, Alien, and 12 Monkeys. A good list for many horror enthusiasts to hear. Having said that, hearing 12 Monkeys brought a particular smile to me, as it's a film I have long held in high esteem. It offers a sort of grounded look at time travel and the key figures that led to the disease and outbreak, and the time loop which the characters fought and grapple with. The Thing seems to be the inspiration for the enemy faction, which are known as Orphans.
Something is here.
They present as humanoid creatures that seemingly recombine with their departed to enhance the abilities of the survivors. This is the gameplay mechanic that is looking to set Cronos New Dawn apart, the mechanism they build their gameplay around. It is the cut off their limbs, or shoot them in the mutated eye component that aims to challenge the player with choices and mindful planning. Not only do the various enemy types get infused into the live orphan when it combines with the dead, but a physical augmentation transpires as well, their bodies thickening, presumably demanding more of our precious resources to tackle the problem at hand. This serves as both a gameplay mechanic and a way to build immersion through an event that would make sense for the world we will be playing in. The very nature of the recombining mechanic is also promising as far as the genre is concerned. Survival horror, in order to give the player a sense of dread, anxiety, and agency, has often leaned into inventory management. The player must decide which weapons, ammunitions, and health options they wish to store in their limited inventory space. This leads to choice, player decision-making, and ultimately scarcity. Decisions and planning matter, and thus can feel all the more satisfying when we accomplish our task. The Time Diver has a host of tools to combat the orphan and retrieve the key figures they dive through time to retrieve. The weapon of the Time Diver looks to be a pistol similar in vein to the service weapon in Remedy's Control, a device that can shapeshift and perhaps take on numerous familiar weapon types. The weapons, at least in the gameplay trailer, sound sharp and demonstrate visible recoil. The diver also seems to have a limited supply of fuel available to burn enemies, which may be the preferred method to dispatch corpses so that they cannot be consumed by live orphans. And also, there's a stomp, a crunchy, gory stomp.
We have a pretty good understanding of how we suspect the game will play, but now I want to revisit an earlier section, in part since this channel is about art and creativity. I want to talk more about the inspirations. The images I showed before for The Thing were original concept art pieces by Michael Plug. The Thing was originally a short story titled Who Goes There, which was published in 1938. It's 37 pages long. For me, I think it's a somewhat rare instance where the story is better suited for film. I think that the Dark and 12 Monkeys references the devs mentioned are important to look into as well. Not only because they are great pieces of time travel media, but they both play by strict rules. The characters in 12 Monkeys are not concerned with changing the past, as so many time travel movies or pieces of media generally are. They are instead using the past to examine what happened so they can survive in the future. It's a small twist on the genre that really grounds the movie. They can't change what has been done, they can only study it. I hope Cronos sort of goes down this road as well, as I think it will be interesting. It creates a way forward, as opposed to a save-the-day scenario where everything that happened no longer was. Instances like that often feel ungratifying, like a story that reveals itself to be a dream, and nothing was real nor mattered. It removes the stakes, and makes us question whether the adventure was worth our time. Alright, that's sort of going to be it for my more regimented, focused form of voiceover, and I'm going to go more to just talking about the game and art inspirations and things like that. I think it's also reasonable to have some doubts about Bloober Team and their ability to pull off this game. Silent Hill 2 was sort of a breakout success for them in a way that they hadn't yet achieved. It should also be noted that Bloober Team has two teams that work on games, and this is the A team, which is to say, the team that did not make Silent Hill 2 Remake. This team's latest work is The Medium. They've also made games like Observer, System Redux, and Layers of Fear, none of which I've played. All the games, though, do have this in common. They have great sense of art style and music. Up until the Silent Hill 2 remake, Bloober Team was largely known just for their storytelling and their ability to craft interesting worlds. Their gameplay, though, had always been lacking. Silent Hill 2 remake obviously changed that a bit, as it does have very good gameplay, although a bit simplistic. The other games were considered by many to be walking simulators. I think there are valid concerns on their jump from the medium to a game like Cronos New Dawn, where gameplay is going to be sort of at the forefront of everything they're trying to achieve. Now, if we want to be positive, we would look at how they've handled story and atmosphere, dialogue and music in the past, and say that that is something that will enhance the product they're trying to create. I also can't claim to know how two development teams work or if there are any secrets shared, which I'm sure there are. But since Silent Hill 2 was such a massive step forward, I would have to assume that that knowledge is going to be pushed on to Cronos and even gave them the confidence maybe to start exploring those systems. I believe they were in development simultaneously. I'm going to talk a little bit about the drawing here too and how much I love doing hands in particular, but hands that aren't even the focus, just the background hands that I'm drawing in now, and how loose you can be with it and just imply form with a couple pieces of light, and it's a really gratifying part of doing hands, and I find myself always doing it on the far side hand, is just finding a light source that'll hit just the essential parts. Back to the game though, and Bloober Team. I think it's a really exciting prospect that a team that does do story and atmosphere and sort of psychological sort of explorations is doing a game that is more in the survival horror genre, as I think it's a genre that is just desperately in want of something that sort of is taking itself seriously, especially kind of in the absence of Dead Space. Resident Evil is what it is, and Resident Evil 7 and 8 did take themselves pretty seriously, but by and large it's sort of a B horror movie franchise in terms of its story and its characters. In Dead Space, for whatever reason, I actually really like the story and I think it's pretty awesome, but it is not held in super high regard in terms of the story, and I think it'd be really cool to have a story that is in line with, say, Silent Hill or something like that, and make it play in the same way that a Dead Space or Resident Evil does, so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. And that's really what I'm hoping for Cronos New Dawn, is just a really nice fusion of sort of Silent Hill type themes, and the gameplay that Dead Space 1 and 2 particularly sort of bring to the table. I also think a fusion of, say, Resident Evil 2 Remake and Dead Space 1 Remake would be really cool, if that's the route they went for this game. And what I mean by that is Resident Evil 2 Remake has a really strong emphasis on resource management and some sort of clever puzzles, whereas Dead Space is not so much interested in those things. Of course, there's some resource management and some puzzles or platforming, but it leans a little more into, we'll say, like the Resident Evil 4 type, slightly more action-oriented horror. And I do think there's a space to bridge between Resident Evil 2, 4, and Dead Space, and I think it'd be a really good area for a game to walk. I don't know, in my mind that it would be the perfect fusion of gameplay elements, at least for me. Something that forces you to use your brain, that forces you to make decisions about your inventory space and feel like you're missing out a little bit. And again, Dead Space does do that, but if you focus on a single weapon in that game, you don't really need to worry too much about your resource management, even if you have a couple weapons that you are utilizing. And as far as the puzzles go, there was never anything quite as intricate, so far as I can recall, as some of like the Dead Space or Resident Evil 2 puzzling, which even just the Raccoon City police station is a puzzle to make it out of. And I don't know, that's just such a memorable location for me. And if this game has a location that forces you to move all around its environment to get pieces to ultimately escape or take care of a problem, I just think that'd be a great way to do it. I want to talk a little bit more about my drawing too, which is that I added a big spike to the back of the helmet, and in my mind that just seemed logical, because if you're going to have creatures attacking you, it'd be nice to have a defense mechanism in place, particularly the rear.
I had to do a lot of guessing on what I thought some textures would look like. I decided to add some tentacle-like growth to the bottom half of the body to convey the recombining ability of the orphans, as if the diver had gotten tangled up in something or had gone too deep into time and space. The corruption is starting to creep its way up the diver onto the suit and arms. As for other areas of the drawing, I sort of just had to guess, like the tank at the rear. I also did a lot of guesswork on what textures may look like, but overall I'm pretty happy with how the helmet turned out at the very least. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and started drawing something yourself. If not, no worries. Let me know if you're excited for Cronos down below. I know I am. I've been waiting for a survival horror game to come along that scratched the Dead Space itch. It was the Silent Hill 2 remake that got me back into the genre of games, so I'm hoping the team over at Bluebird can deliver something fresh, terrifying, and new. Something that sticks around with us and doesn't languish in idle hands of giant developers with unrealistic expectations. I hope you guys will swing by my site and check to see if there's something there you like. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.